Okay, took the hairdryer to this, and let's see what next. I think I'm going to just go with the yellow green, which is this guy. Um, Oddly enough, between yellow and green, and I have a decent little amount of yellow and green sort of already mixed up over here, which is nice. Did I say green and yellow? Blue and yellow mixed up. I did want to make sure I got cleaned that brush pretty well. He didn't want to stand up. Light mix, watery light, quite a bit. The joke is enough, mix up enough for you and your friend. Okay, that's pretty light. Maybe a little too light even for me. I did get a new 12 round brush, and it's doing what most new brushes, regardless of their quality, will do, and it's shedding a bit of hairs. Pretty much all brushes I've ever used will do a little bit of that, especially at the beginning. You can kind of try to pluck those out if you want. Maybe I'll demonstrate that sometime. But for now, I'm just going to try to finish this petal. It's kind of hard to keep track of where I need to paint and where I don't. Sure. Let's see, what else could we do? I could do my straight red. Ooh, that'd be good. That'd be good. Let's see. I have sometimes I'll switch my waters around depending on which is both either dirtier or literally is sort of closer to the color I want to use. This water right here happens to be a little bit grayed out, but there's a little bit of purpley in it, so I'm not so worried. I do like this naphthol red. I hope it doesn't scare folks. I don't think it's, I was going to say as scary as the, oh, never mind. I'm not even going to finish that thought. Red, orange, red. There's some interesting things, considerations I could make. I mean, I could just, now that I'm here, I'm just going to keep it really nice and light. When I come back over this, well, never mind. I'll talk about that later when I do it. But one thing that's going to happen is that this is a relatively warm red, so it's going to interact with the warmer red-orange. just fine. It's going to act with these violets. It's not such a warm red that it's going to be a strong effect, but if this was a red that was really leaning towards orange, glazing over these violets would have the effect of mixing in some secret complementary colors. And as I discussed real briefly, complementary colors, well, they look beautiful. They naturally enhance the appearance of each other when they're side by side. They will make grays and browns and desaturated, and we'll be talking about that term later, dulled out colors. Once again, I'm keeping this so light that it's really not going to dull this violety, this red-violet shape too much. But when I do come over and strengthen this this overlapped shape that I want to be more leaning towards violet than straight red, I'll probably use the cooler red, quinacridone rose, and then over here I'll use the warmer red. So once again, having a nice increasing the contrast of all sorts of things, including the temperature. What can I do here? This is my blue violet. Let's just do it. That one was for Leanne. I'm going to clean a little spot here. So blue violet is going to be mostly French. Sorry, not French. There's two types of ultramarine. You'll see a one called French ultramarine and one just called ultramarine. And the question inevitably comes up, well, what's the difference? To which I like to respond in my snarkiest voice that, the French one is French. Usually people appreciate that. And I don't use a snarky voice. But really the difference is very subtle. It has to do more with the history of of naming conventions for that particular pigment. And some brands will be slightly different. Sometimes one can be a little bit darker or a little bit less pure of a color, but I have found them to be extremely interchangeable. And I think mostly they just keep making both because a certain part of the world became used to using the term French ultramarine, and so there's always going to be a demand for that, and a different part of the world got used to painting with what was just called ultramarine, so they're going to keep using that one. One of those interesting supply and demand things. I'm going to make a bit of a thirsty brush there. What's fun is to sort of see color is so relative. The notion of having a color by itself and really being able to say much about it is really selling color short. Because the appearance of a color will literally visually change depending on what colors are next to it and what other colors are influencing it, which is one of the reasons we want to understand this whole color wheel in general. You know, that color before seemed more of a little bit more of a reddish violet to me, but now that I have this blue violet next to it, it's looking a little bit more, I'm not sure what it's looking. I'm going to think about that. And while I'm thinking about that, I'm going to paint the last petal here. I think it just made it, actually, it seems like it made it more obviously reddish purple. Might be a little too reddish, not positive. And of course, now we have our straight orange. Let's see, there's that yellow paint that I'm not exactly sure what it is, and there was way too much. Of the naphthol red. I'm going to get some of that naphthol red out of there, just some of the paint out of my brush. That color, when that went on, it looked pretty pretty orangey yellow. It's dried pretty, just it looks pretty much just like a warm yellow right now. We'll deal with that. But once again, when I am bringing in this orange, I'm gonna make sure to keep it nice and light and watery. It's interesting. Sometimes I feel like I'm starting at the tip of the petal, farther away from the center, and sometimes the exact opposite. That's fun to see how it interacts with that yellow. As well as the red-orange. Talk amongst yourselves right now. It's kind of handy having a table of towels. Soaking up the extra paint. That was a bit risky, but just the kind of guy, you know. What I'm talking about is coming back into that spot right there, try to clean it up when it could have been a little bit too dry, and just sort of introduced a little bit too much moisture and made it dry kind of weird, different rates, and create a bloom. Like I think I've said, the 300-pound paper seems a lot more forgiving than the 140-pound paper. Okay, I'm going to call that at least one layer on with each color. I'm going to stop and think about it, and I'm sure I'll come back and do a whole bunch more. So, more later.